Hi everyone, my name is Joey Jenkins with Intentional 360. We help individuals and organizations be intentional about their visions, strategies, and actions to achieve peak performance. Welcome to episode 1 of our Dream Big, Act Small podcast. Extremely excited to be with you guys today. This podcast is for those of you who refuse to accept mediocrity and are striving to live up to your full potential. In this podcast, we're going to interview influencers like Will here, who are making an impact in their field, their communities, and their lives. We have filmmaker and actor Will Cuddy. I have Will on the show for 2 reasons as our first guest. The first reason is that Will happens to be my younger brother. And so if you're doing a pilot podcast, if there's any glitches, I figured it's always better to mess up with family. But the second and primary reason that we have Will here today is in all the years I've known Will, which is his whole life and most of mine, I think Will represents dreaming big and acting small better than just about anybody I know. So I'm going to ask him some questions. We're going to learn and grow from him. So thanks for being on the show with us, Will.
Thank you, brother. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So why don't we start off with you giving us just a little bit about your background and where you're at today.
So, like you said, filmmaker and actor, and I actually started acting on stage when I was 9 years old. I was going to say my mom, but our mom brought me to a summer acting camp, and I'd been doing sports for a while, but she saw that I had somewhat of a big personality and thought that it would be not better utilized, but utilized and let flourish if I could take it to the stage. So she took me into a summer camp called Young People's Theater Project over at Jesuit High School, and I went in, did not want to go. It was like the first day of kindergarten. Bunch of kids already there knew each other, and right as I finally convinced mom to let me go home, the director of the whole camp saw me in the crack of the door, like scurrying away, and said, "Why don't you come in and check it out?" And she was really kind, and ended up being my high school director all throughout high school, and really that day was what got me into the arts, I guess, per se. And then I've been
9 years old, you did this huge solo on stage in front of hundreds of people.
So after I had not wanted to go to the camp at all to begin with, a couple of days later I was leaving, and mom was like, "How's camp going? Do you feel like you've acclimated and everything?" And I was like, "Yeah, I got a solo." And this girl was walking next to us, and she said, "You got a solo? Your son got the lead part from the kids ensemble." So I was like, "I guess I got the lead part of this kids ensemble." I had a big solo all by myself. I'd never been on stage before, and probably peed my pants a little bit coming on stage the first time I did my solo.
Typical with this guy.
But slowly got more comfortable, and had wanted to transfer over to film or on-screen acting for a while. And so when I was 15, there were auditions for a Gus Van Sant movie here in Portland called Paranoid Park. And I went with my cousins. They were doing a big extras cattle call casting. And so I went in and gave my headshot and answered some questions, and didn't get cast as an extra, but got a call about a month later and said that they were doing this casting for a kids reality show called Endurance. And so I went down, went and got video recorded for this audition, got a call back, and the callback was the form of, "We'd really like you to enter a video into our online submission category," with kind of like an asterisk that you'd come in with an audition, and so you were kind of put in a higher category already. And so I did so, had my best buddy Anthony film it, and then about a month later found out that I was one of 3 final kids on an online submission poll to get on the show as the final spot. So I had to reach out to all my friends. At this point, I think it was MySpace, but make a big social media blast and try and get everyone to vote for me for this final spot on the show. After about 2 weeks of voting, I indeed got the most votes for the show, and then went down my first week of sophomore year of high school, went down to Fiji for 2 weeks, and kind of got my first taste of, reality shows in a lot of ways are kind of acting more so than you think they are. And so got my taste of
big surprise.
Yeah, big surprise. On-screen exposure, and was like, okay, maybe this on-screen thing isn't quite as a lofty dream as I thought it would be. So I came back to Portland, talked to some people, ended up getting an acting agent, and did some small parts in made-for-TV movies and straight to DVD movies and commercials and things like that, and did a decent job for the small industry that is the Portland film industry. And then my sophomore year of college, summer going into my sophomore year, ended up getting a part on as the rich, pompous murderer kid in Grimm, the first season of Grimm.
You seem to get pitched as parts who are consistently punks, bullies.
I know it.
Is that a coincidence, or are they just pegging you really well?
I don't know if I'm just secretly this pompous kid who thinks he's better than everyone else, but I would consistently, all the parts that I got before the most recent, one of the more recent parts that I got, which was my biggest, but also what I felt was my best acting, probably because hopefully it was more like true to who I am, were all punks. And then in my junior year of college, I got cast in across from, I say that, but I got to act across from Reese Witherspoon in the movie Wild that's shot here in Oregon. And that was the first one. That was this happy-go-lucky hiker kid. Wasn't in any way this rude, pompous part that I'd gotten in the past. And felt I did a really good job, and really tried to capitalize on that to move forward in a new endeavor behind the camera. Prior to getting those parts, I'd actually gotten to see the technology of capturing what these actors were doing, and kind of was drawn to the behind the scenes aspect of the art of filmmaking. And so my freshman year of college, got a camera, started shooting everything, would shoot my friends just hanging out, and really learning just kind of how to find like natural compositions within shots from hanging out with my friends and shooting them consistently, like all the time. I've got hours and hours and hours of footage of my friends just hanging out in college. And then my junior and senior year entered into a 72-hour film festival down at the University of Oregon, and we won both years in a row the 72-hour short film festival. I was like, okay, I really enjoy this. I like it more. It's, in my mind, less subjective than my acting. I feel like there's more tangible things I can feel like I'm doing right, as opposed to not really knowing if my performance was good or bad, or good to me or good to certain people. So that felt like there was more measurables that I could latch onto that I felt would push me forward.
Right.
And so now I just finished directing 2 short films. This past year I put on a small film showcase here in Portland called Portland's Young Filmmaker Showcase. We got the mayor to come out and open the event, and then finished up directing my 3rd short film after the 2 that I did in college, called Linnea. It's a 15-minute short film that we're now entering in festivals nationwide. And then just finished up another short film, much shorter, less ambitious, called Things They See, that we're going to be entering into film festivals as well. But the biggest thing that came from Wild, from my dreams moving forward, is that I just talked to his executive producer yesterday, but I'm trying to work for Jean-Marc Vallée, the director of Wild and Dallas Buyers Club, and a few other great films, to work as his personal assistant for an HBO show that he's directing this upcoming winter, Q4.
Awesome. So some big dreams coming down the pipeline. Yeah. One of the reasons I had you on the show, Will, is in my TED Talk, Dream Big, Act Small, I talk about you and some of your aspirations and dreams. Can you tell us a little bit about where do you hope to be 5 years from now, and by the time you're 50, where do you hope that your career in filmmaking or acting takes you?
I'm 24 years old, to clarify my age.
Just a baby.
Just a wee baby. And I've kind of put together, through some of your guidance of life plans and planning out how to really reach, especially these bigger dreams that I'm trying to accomplish. My 5-year plan thus far, I'd really like to direct a feature film by the time I'm 29, which would be 5 years from now. Have it released, actually, by the time I'm 29. And so, in terms of the route and to get there, I really need to learn the craft of filmmaking itself. And so, through both studying films that are already out by great directors, I'm also have a plan of directing 3 to 4 more short films, each of greater, not necessarily length, but quality in terms of the attention to detail, the kind of crew that we're putting together, which all basically indicates a bigger budget. But at the same time, learning how to manage, like I said, the business side of it, so that when I go to investors down the road, I'm not, this millennial kid with big dreams that doesn't know how to pay attention to the little details that will, connect with what is going to most likely be baby boomers or, you know, Generation Z, X. What is your generation?
I'm the millennial generation, Generation Y. I'm in the
right,
tail
right
end
in
of
the
it.
middle.
Right.
So
Generation X is right below us.
At that point, probably Generation Y, which is slightly less entitled and slightly less paying attention to the work that's going to go into these things, but trying to then frame myself in a way that these older generations who are probably going to be giving me the funding to make a film, which, I mean, the reality of it is that feature films at the minimum cost $250,000 if you really need to pull them off right. So as a
Any investors out there?
Yeah, right. As a
small ask.
At that point, 28-year-old filmmaker who you know, has directed short films, but which are hard to monetize. It's going to be hard to show any kind of actual return on investment unless until I have some kind of feature film idea that would appeal to a massive audience for distribution. But trying to pay attention to both aspects of it moving forward through these next 5 years, so that when I am 29, I can release a feature film and show that I'm the right man for the job to be able to get these investors to invest, and then be able to actually get distribution to move forward and have that cascade into films down the road. So
there's some very intentional planning and strategizing on the actions you're taking to make sure that you achieve your goals by the dates you've set. And then by the time you're 50, in my TED Talk recently, I told people about the gift I gave you for your most recent birthday, which was a replica Oscar trophy, promising you, and it says "I promise" on the little tag on there, that you'll win an Oscar someday. Is that a promise that you're going to help me keep as a man of integrity, somebody who believes in my word, and that matters a great deal to me?
I'm not going to win an Oscar for you.
Absolutely. That's not the ask.
But I don't like to materialize success as winning an Oscar as much as me being able to tell the stories that I want to tell, but in terms and to make a feature film, but in terms of just something that is a symbol of you've always said, shoot the arrow high, and you know, it naturally will come slightly lower. I'm not saying I'm not going to win an Oscar, hopefully, and I you know, that's a very
absolutely, I understand. It wasn't your promise; it's my promise to you that I believe in you enough to achieve that.
Right.
So,
but
that's where I think you're going.
The goal would be to move forward and not just make feature films, but make feature films that people connect to, audiences, and hopefully from a filmmaker standpoint, other filmmakers would appreciate as well from the art of filmmaking. Yeah,
so on that note, Simon Sinek has his great TED Talk and book, Start With Why. What's your why behind what you do as a filmmaker?
Well, I think the reason why, like I had said before, I switched to more of the behind the camera aspect of filmmaking from an actor to a filmmaker was really that I felt acting was just one small portion of what the greater art of filmmaking was. It's naturally what we see the most because that's what humans connect to humans. And when you're watching a film, the average viewer is not saying like, wow, Wes Anderson's composition is really speaking to me and I feel something because of that. You're connecting with the characters on screen, and I suppose his films aren't necessarily the best example because his characters are so flamboyant and exaggerated and kind of almost like not supposed to be connected with as much as they're supposed to be observed from this outside perspective. But really there's so much more that goes into it from cinematography and camera movement and lighting and all these things that enhance the actor's performance so that you can really feel what their performance is trying to portray. And so I saw that I enjoyed controlling all those other creative aspects or having a say in them so that I could tell stories and influence people in ways that like just as you as a mentor and a coach trying to embed in people planning and reaching their dreams, my films could bring out something in someone, or you know, bring a new light to some kind of social issue, or bring a new light to a kid who wants to follow his dreams, and then after seeing you had mentioned like Gattaca, will go out and be like,
never save anything for the swim back.
Well, you know, why would I? There's a lot of power in film as an art because it reaches so many people, that will allow you to possibly bring out a lot in you know, a lot of the movies that you've watched probably pushed you to be inspired to do what you do, even if you didn't want to be a filmmaker.
Yeah, absolutely.
The stories that you're telling films are not about filmmakers, films are about people.
So you're able to make a difference through film. Not only are you taking your passion and something that you enjoy doing and you're skilled at and utilizing it for those reasons, but also because of the world's need and the ways that you can impact and influence others through your work.
Absolutely.
That's great. Wonderful. One of the things I love about you the most, Will, is how insanely bold you are in your approach. You take some big swings. You swing for the fences for sure. Can you maybe just tell us your one example of the boldest move that you've made?
Let's see, the boldest move that I've made. I guess I'll go with maybe not the boldest, and I'll maybe say a couple of those as well, but the boldest move that didn't really seem all that bold at the time, but that turned into a relationship and something that I would have never really expected was to get into Wild. I had a buddy a few months earlier before my audition tell me to, if I ever was nervous before an interview or an audition, to stand like Superman for 2 minutes. He maybe said like 90 seconds or something, and your anxiety will go down and your confidence will go up. And I didn't really think too much about it. He didn't reference where it came from or what, why he was telling me. He was just, hey, I watched, or he didn't even say he watched a video or anything. He just told me I had something coming up. And so at my callback for the audition, I had practiced a bunch. I came up from University of Oregon for the weekend, was feeling confident, but was like, why would I not utilize every bit of confidence juice I possibly can to get this to come to fruition. And so I went to the bathroom, stood in the bathroom stall for 2 minutes like Superman, and walked out of it feeling like I absolutely nailed it. And having gone through a ton of auditions and facing a lot of rejection, you know, I feel like I've done pretty well in terms of landing parts in a small market of Portland, but I've honestly probably landed 7% to 10% max of the auditions that I've gone to. It's not, you never know whether you come out of it if you're going to get the role just based on your look, even if you did really, really well, felt confident. And I walked out of that audition feeling like I never felt before, and walked out, and Dad was actually outside, and I walked past him with this huge beaming smile, and he was like, well, how'd it go? And I was like, I got the part.
It's your role.
Yeah, like I can't, like if I don't get the part, then that's fine, because like there's nothing more I could have done. And 6 months later, I'm watching a bunch of TED Talks, and this woman's name, Amy Cuddy, my last name is Will Cuddy, struck my eye, and I was like, oh, I was watching like 6 or 7 TED Talks, and watch her TED Talk about body language, and 8 minutes into it, she starts saying like Superman, and I realized that what I had done in that bathroom that day was actually her researched concept in bringing about more confidence.
So Amy's a Harvard professor, right?
Yeah.
Second most watched TED Talk of all time, over 26 million views, I believe, at this point. That was a month ago, so it's probably 27 plus now.
Right. And so I looked her, I didn't know who she was. I looked her up, saw that it had so many views at that time, and looked her up. Harvard business professor, was just like, I am a Cuddy from across the country, completely influenced my entire life probably, especially if I get this job now I was just telling you about with the director of Wild, would never have come to be. Email her, simply just thanking her, telling her my story, spent a little bit of time writing that email, not thinking I'd get a response, and 20 minutes later got a response from Amy that said, Will, of the 12,000 plus emails I've received in the past year since my talk, this is by far one of the best. I'd love, thank you so much for reaching out. I'd love to wow. you, and if you're willing, I'd like to interview you for my book. And I was like, okay, one simple, bold email to a huge TED Talk TED speaker turned into this, and about
now you're in the back of her book.
3 months ago, her book Presence came out, and I'm the case study for the final chapter, talking about just what all of her research could possibly lead more tangibly in your life. Yeah.
And you've flown to Boston to meet with her and gone up to Seattle to speak at, introduce her at one of her events, right?
Yeah, so I flew out to Boston to see the public premiere of Wild with her and her family. She took us out to dinner. Great, fantastic lady. I'll text her sometimes when this power posing will bring about something hilarious in my life.
Yeah. I love that because I teach that at a lot of my workshops I do in the prison and public schools and private schools.
Right.
And so I love that you connected to her. And I think my favorite part is that you were sending a simple thank you email.
Yeah.
So just to reinforce the power of gratitude, and you never know, when you just do the right thing, right things typically happen to you as long as your motives are right, you know?
Yeah,
So
and
just a sheer gratitude.
Right. And then that, of anything that was not motive driven whatsoever, like I really just was in awe that I had just seen what totally changed my life in front of me, and wanted to express to her how she had indeed changed my life. And
well, that's a great example of the little things and how the little things make a difference. And that's actually my next question for you is, being my brother our whole lives, how much I believe in the little things and never hitting the snooze button and doing every little thing you can do to give yourself that edge and advantage to be successful in the world. Can you tell me, what are some of the little things that you do, or even your peers that you've seen be successful, and how much do you think that makes a difference?
I think it takes, we talked about the millennials earlier, I think it takes what my generation is strongest at, which is dreaming relentlessly and dreaming without any kind of, until maybe you get to a point where those dreams seem to putter out and you don't know why. Because as a kid growing up, we've gone through like the tech boom and all these startups that have just become, like Stanford, or Snapchat is run by, like, now much bigger probably, but by 10 Stanford grads, and then turned down $1.1 billion from Facebook when I think they were like 23 and like my age, 24.
Yeah, that's a bold move in and of itself.
Yeah.
You obviously believe in yourself quite a bit when you turn down $1 billion
Right.
in your young lower 20s.
Right. And so I think there's been a lot of overnight successes seen in some capacity in our generation, because there's a lot more publicity about it because of social media and things, where you can see these certain companies, but the number of companies that are actually doing that are few and far between.
Right, that's
when
the
it really
minority.
comes down to it.
Yeah.
And so so that's why we have such that we believe we can do anything, but the acting small aspect of it, I feel like, is where really the work comes from, and where we took 4 months to rewrite the voiceover script for our short film after it was done, because, and at some point we're debating, whether it was a sunk cost, like whether we should move on, but really saw that we put all this work into it, and if we could balance our time with acting small in terms of finding the very nuanced ways we could write this script to make it the best it could be, which was completely different from the beginning. We met daily, talking about, mapped out our entire short film on sticky notes, reordered everything. Like it was a very detailed process in terms of how we actually coming to the final result of what the story was. And that made what could have been an okay project turn into an outstanding project from in terms of the crew and how they were happy with it, in terms of what the audience said when we premiered it at our film showcase here in Portland.
It made all the difference.
And it made completely all the difference.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, just from a creative standpoint, it would have just been a hit and a miss.
Yeah.
Or swing and a miss, rather.
And that's one of the things and reasons I had you on here is I think you're somebody who sees the big picture, you can dream big, but you also have this relentless attention to detail and know how much the little things make a difference. Gary Vaynerchuk calls it the clouds in the dirt in his new book that came out recently, Ask Gary V. Somebody has great content and interest, but that you have to be able to live both in the clouds and in the dirt, and that willingness to do those little things, I think, is one of the great differentiators for our generations. The millennial generation, Generation Z. I'm sorry, I think earlier I said Generation X, but Generation X is the one above, Generation Z is the one below.
Right.
So for both our generations, I think the older people are frustrated in our lack of willingness to do the little things to stand out, for sure.
And it's definitely the most exhausting from a millennial standpoint in terms of dreaming big is some of it is that I don't think we're wired to figure out what those little things are. It's not only the big picture, but you actually have to materialize those little steps in getting there, and that's all in the planning. and figuring out that everything really matters. And
which isn't as fun as hitting a home run and knocking $1 billion company out of the park,
right,
obviously.
absolutely.
Or
but I mean,
feature
even
film director,
right, and even I'm sure the kids from Stanford that started are probably laughing, saying like, these are still probably 6 years of our lives that were 80-hour work weeks, figuring out exactly the little details of what would stick. And I can't remember who talks about stickiness, but
there's a book Made to Stick.
Made to Stick, yeah.
I forget the name. Chip Heath, I think, or Chip and Dan Heath maybe are the authors.
And in my mind, it really is the entire package. And I talk about it, and it's one of the more, not disheartening, because I feel like I'm a perfectionist, and it's fun to really be meticulous about all the details, but everything seems to matter. Like, everything matters in terms of having something. Really, we talked about, say, with your nonprofit, after your event ends, your event isn't really over until 24 hours after the event. When we did the Portland's,
or beyond, right?
Or beyond, yeah. But Portland's Young Filmmakers Showcase, the biggest regret I had was that I didn't feel like we could capitalize on all the relationships that we built that night to move forward and find more collaborators to do creative work with, because we were so exhausted at the very end of the event itself that we didn't reach out to people and thank them for coming. And which, like you said, gratitude is huge, and it didn't. We still built a lot of great relationships, and
right, it's not quite what it could have become.
Right, could have become.
Could you, to lighten things up a little bit, maybe tell them about one of your funniest memories growing up with your two amazing older brothers?
Let's see. There's when Chris broke the couch, or.
We were roughhousing when we weren't supposed to.
Yeah. Or there's probably some that Chris wouldn't want me to tell.
That's all right. We can skip that question.
But
confidentiality.
I think a lot of the memories I had with you guys growing up were really honestly just having the encouragement and support of you guys from being this annoying little spoiled brother that was still loved and supported. You guys always let me hang out with all of your friends. Actually, one of the funnier stories was my ticket into their friend group, which Joey's 8 and Chris is 10 years older than me, was consistently just getting them items from the fridge within a certain amount of time. Be like,
Sprite, Coke,
chips,
whatever.
Yeah, you can hang out with us if you get us chips in 10 seconds. And I'd be like, no way. And then they would just start counting 1, 2, and I would just dead sprint upstairs.
Take note, older siblings. The counting down method works. Right. Kids are competitive.
So I guess just being incentivized to hang out with my cooler older brothers.
Yeah, that's great. So you're a big dreamer. Tell the audience, what's one of your most outlandish dreams that you have?
One of my most outlandish dreams. Speaking, I guess, of not overnight success companies, but companies that capitalize. One would just seem like more of a startup, modernized company, but with Airbnb being present, I've had the dream to rather than own some kind of like luxurious home in Portland, Oregon, or New York, or some penthouse, I'd rather have the train cars that you can buy train cars and you can essentially repurpose them. I think I saw it on Reddit, but I'd love to just buy up like 40 train cars in the future down the road and just have like underground silos essentially of just like across the world that I would just rent out on Airbnb, because they would be immediately, I feel like, rented if you're just like, oh, want to stay in an underground like eco-friendly but really very 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 cool train car in Malaysia or something. And so in terms of being able to fund them, rent them out, I feel like it would be pretty viable. But then essentially just have, if I wanted to go travel to a location, have a place to stay or be able to hop around the world if my job catered to it. But
that's new to me. I've never heard that one before. Hopefully you didn't just share it with some of the audience who wants to run hard and fast with it.
Well, I'd see somebody do one before. They put 2 together and cut out a big hole, and they just had this, home the size of like 2 of these rooms. Yeah. And I was like, that seems like a pretty economical way of, how they have homes around the world.
Right. That's great. Who's one of your role models in life? Somebody you look up to?
Role models in life, other than this one.
I'll stop.
I'm trying to think of somebody I look up to consistently. I've been really fortunate to speak on, I guess, a few different people and different attributes that have played into my life, but all of my different family members have very different attributes that I think are strengths in their own and possibly weaknesses in their own in different ways. Yeah. And I think that I've learned a lot from, thankfully, I think honestly having two older brothers and being 10 and 8 years older than me has been a huge blessing in itself, to essentially get to see in some ways what things would work and what things wouldn't work, and what things you enjoyed doing that may not have worked or had worked that you didn't enjoy. Getting jobs at certain places or not capitalizing on getting to travel or something, or having traveled, and getting to have a mom who's like the sweetest woman in the entire world.
It's true.
Who thinks about others, and then having a dad who's extremely driven and planned out and goal oriented, pushing me to follow my dreams and do more of the little things.
Right.
And then you being a driving force in terms of allowing me to dream really big. So I've got the little things, people skills, dreaming big, and then Chris, who's just this calm demeanor, who I think is one of the most level-headed people, if not the most level-headed person I know.
Right.
Bringing this calm, humanistic side to it that consistently tells me, just relieves my anxiety in terms of, if you really think about life and you think about some of the things that you're going through, you can choose to not be stressed, because stress is not an emotion that serves us in any kind of way, really, that will push us forward, as much as maybe the opposite, or the sister emotion of excitement, which I get a lot of the excitement from you, but there's a lot of pressure when you're trying to dream as big as I'm hoping to dream or hoping to live, and a lot of anxiety that comes with that, and stress that comes with that, trying to live up to what you think of yourself, and then and try and maintain living to what you think of yourself, as opposed to living to what others think of you.
Right. I think it's a healthy challenge, that to whom much is given, much is expected. And, a lot of people, and probably most of our audience, have been given a lot. And so I do think there should be a healthy level of burden to your dreams, of what's possible and your impact and what you can achieve in the time that we have in this life. So
yeah,
that's great. Can you speak to the younger generations a little bit and give some advice to them? Anybody in high school, college, maybe just early graduation, what advice would you give them at this stage of their life?
I think one of the things I was happiest that I did, but at the same time still regret not doing more of it, was that there's a lot of fun that can be had working hard in high school and in college, doing things that you love. I feel like it's this special moment, a special area in your life, time period in your life, when you don't have necessarily as much responsibility as you're obviously going to have post-college and later on in your life. And it essentially is the key time in your life that you can find working for what you love, as opposed to working for something that you don't want to do. It's really finding what your passion is in life is a lot easier to do in that time period, when you've got everyone else around you that's still growing up and finding out who they are and figuring themselves out.
You're not paying the bills, responsible for
you're not paying the bills,
providing for your family.
Right. And just the way that I believe our mind works without the clutter of those other responsibilities is when you're the most able to figure out what you love without those complications.
Right.
And so if you can utilize those years to work really hard, but work hard in things that you love, or find what you love to work hard at, that it doesn't feel like work. Like when I did the short film festivals at University of Oregon, it was 72 hours straight of just some of the hardest work I've ever done. But it didn't feel like work because everyone on that set absolutely loved it.
Right.
And there was some excitement about what you were doing, as opposed to an office job where you may not agree with or the vision of the company, or it might not be what you're passionate about.
That actually leads me to my last question for you. So you're a millennial generation. One of the big challenges for leaders and managers today is how to motivate, inspire, and work with the younger generations. And you hear about it all the time, you see articles on it. What advice would you give to maybe Generation X, baby boomers, on how do you manage this new coming millennial generation, Generation Z coming down the pipeline, to be effective employees?
I was just at, was it last night, I think, a town hall meeting for Oregon's Film Association that essentially is the spokesperson for the film industry and all of its employees to the government of Oregon to try and get more tax incentives for films, so that Oregon could be the best place to make movies and bring more people in and produce more jobs.
Oh, great.
And they're talking about they were talking about diversity within the field of the film industry here in Portland, and also talking about age and who was actually working here. And one of the biggest things in my field is that as a student filmmaker, it's what you're always taught to say, is that if you ever get caught shooting somewhere you're not supposed to shoot or whatever, you're supposed to
sorry about that.
Great timing.
The family dynamic I talked about. So that's great. Great kind of conversation around the millennial generation. So what would your advice to those employers be?
What I was going to say was that you come out of being a student where you're kind of at the top of the food chain, glorified, and like seniors that are the top of their class are given a lot of opportunity to do what they want to do with their education when they're still in school. But then you leave school, and now you're suddenly at the bottom of the food chain. And with the millennial generation, I feel like because we are more entitled, we seek more approval and gratitude or accreditation for our work. And so what I wanted to bring up at the Oregon Film Association, I was referring to OMPA's name of the meeting, was that what we did with Portland's Young Filmmakers Showcase is we capped the age at 25 to enter your films. And so it incentivized kids that were just out of school to be able to enter their films and not be competing with all these other generations who have more experience, other equipment, and all these other things, and make them work hard to produce these films because they were accredited as a director or a producer, or things that would incentivize them thinking that they are, or knowing that they are, a bigger role within the bigger picture. And so I think what you can do as a baby boomer or of the older generations to incentivize younger workers is give them more responsibility that leads to bigger results. So in terms of and I think it will be a lot of restructuring in the way that offices work and in the way that companies are ran. But if you can, millennials have so much to give, but if they feel like they're just another cog in the system, I think that's what turns them off, because they're...
But are they just another cog in the system because they suck at working well for the company? Like, because they don't do the little things? Because I'm sure that's what the older generation would be thinking right now, is how do I give them more responsibility if they're not doing their job well, just to play
devil's
the other side of it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. That's a good point. I mean, I guess my hope would be...
And I don't think they all suck at working. Of course, I'm just trying to create the dialogue question on it.
I think I guess maybe what I meant was maybe like freedom within, feeling like they have freedom to have some flexibility in the way that they work.
So more autonomy and more high level guidance of what the vision is, and know that they're passionate about where the company is moving forward. But then in some ways, I guess, allow them to be creative in the way that they get there. And obviously you're going to have checkups to make sure that's working within the company's vision. Right.
And I can't speak to it. I mean, I work in a creative field. I work in a field I was an advertising student at the University of Oregon, so in terms of a field that allows autonomy or allows any kind of, Google-esque office, Airbnb type office setting where there's so much autonomy and you can work these hours and these hours, and I can't speak maybe as much to a more traditional type of office workspace.
Well, there's actually Dan Pink does a lot of research in his book Drive, and he does a TED Talk as well talking about this, about kind of motivation 3.0 and the trends of motivation from 1.0 to 2.0, carrot and stick, and 1.0 is more biological, to 3.0 being more mastery, autonomy, and purpose, and that's what's more motivating the current generation. So that'd be a good place for people to look at on maybe what's starting to motivate more of the millennials or Generation Z.
Right.
No, that's great.
I think it's tough because I think that because we're big dreamers, not everyone can be a film director. Not everyone can be. You still have to have everyone that they can't. Not everyone can be an administrator. You have to have.
Not everyone's going to be CEO of Facebook.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that when millennials don't feel like they can obtain that kind of, I don't want to say status, but that level of success, I suppose, that they would think would hopefully be an overnight achievement. That's where we're totally flawed as a generation, in my opinion.
I can see that. I'm part of your generation, so I see the challenge in my peers as well. And that. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate all your advice at both the dreaming big side and the acting small side. I think you're doing an amazing job to make an impact both in your field as well as just the family and friends you have around you. So keep up the great work. Excited to have you here. Thank you guys for tuning in to our first episode. I want to thank Jonathan Reed and Silversmith Media for being the film crew and putting this on. They do amazing work. You should check them out. And also want to thank you guys for giving us your time. We're excited to have you guys in future episodes. Thanks for being here. Keep dreaming big and acting small, and have a wonderful week.